Welcome into the Dead Arm Sports Podcast, coming at you live on a Tuesday, January 17th to be exact.
On a Tuesday. Club's going up today.
Nice.
Who is that artist?
Oh, I have no idea.
That had to have been like the hardest one-hit wonder. Like,
I can't imagine one that would be.
Good for him. Hey, I'm sure he made a lot of money. Good for him.
Perfect. Got a big episode for you today. Josh and Jill in the club on Tuesday. Got Wildcard Weekend recap for you. A little Sony Open.
Drake is in that song. Okay.
Right.
I love Mackinnon. I don't know what's going on. All right. Enough of that.
Going off the rails already.
Yep. Bad news bears. We got 2 recordings. Oh boy.
Speaking of the bad news bears, Jill, question of the day today. Gonna talk a little baseball. I haven't been able to do that lately.
I like it. Whack.
Who should be an easy one for you? I think I know one of the answers of yours, but all-time favorite baseball player and current favorite baseball player.
I mean, Derek Jeter's my boy. I think that's the one that you knew that you would have, that would be it. If for you fortunate listeners that are Facebook friends with me, you can go look at my profile picture or at my page on my profile pictures and see that I got technically a selfie with him, although his back was turned to me. I was a broke college student, but I decided to break the bank and bought some second row seats right behind home plate kind of basically right behind the Yankees on deck circle. And it was Jeter's last season. So it was the first. I went to all 3 games that series. I sat up in the upper deck on Thursday. I sat on kind of like the club level, middle tier deck on Saturday. And then Sunday, I went balls to the walls, broke the bank for that whole series just so I could see Jeter. But yeah, it was really cool. It was really cool, man. That was one of my favorite sports memories ever was being there and seeing him, I'd never been to a Yankees game. It's so rare when the Brewers or the Yankees come to Miller Park.
Yeah.
And so since I'd never been, I decided, hey, let me just make a full freaking weekend out of this and go to all 3. So, but it was really cool. That's one of my favorite sports memories. In terms of my favorite current player, honestly, it's hard to say. There's I've been rotating between guys. I fell in love with Josh Hader. I've fallen in love with Corbin Burns. I've fallen in love with, Willie Adames at times, but it's the Brewers just exhaust me so damn much that I don't know. It's hard to point to a current favorite player, at least a Brewer. I at this point, more than just being rooting for a specific player, I more admire talents, I guess. Shohei just blows. He just blows your mind every time. I kind of want to think last postseason, I was rooting hard for Bryce Harper because it's he'd almost been undervalued at that point, which is insane to think about somebody that's got a $300+ million contract.
Right.
But Sonny, I was rooting for him hardcore because he never really had any postseason success. And especially given that the Nationals won the World Series the season after he left for Philly. So I was rooting hard for him. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't ever root for the Phillies, or for any Philadelphia sports team, but I was rooting for Bryce there. So that's probably the closest thing for me, I guess, just fandom wise, about like rooting for a specific player most recently.
Gotcha. Yeah, my current favorite player, it was a rough day when Rizzo got traded to the Yankees from the Cubs, but he is always a guy I liked. So
yeah, I mean, back in the old days when we started up on the old YouTube, you had the framed Rizzo jersey right behind.
Yep. Now it's in front of me, so not on camera anymore. But yeah, I was at his first Cubs game when he hit a home run after he had gotten called up, and just saw his whole career just kind of unfold before your eyes, culminating with that World Series championship. And yeah, it was a good run, and he's a great clubhouse guy, great guy on and off of the field, and still doing that with the Yankees. But every year, it seems like the last 3 years now, his contract has been up, and he's had an opt out and keeps going back. So
not going back to the Cubs. At least
hope down the road, but we'll see. And
now, that's your favorite all-time player, or is he your favorite current? Now, do you have a favorite current player?
He's probably my current all-time player, but I would say my younger days, it was Sammy Sosa. I mean, how could it not be? Sammy, yes, he was a steroid user, but who wasn't in that day? I mean, all the big names pretty much were using it at that point in time, but just absolutely from the start of the game when he'd sprint out to the dugout, do his lap of right field, wave to the fans, and then every time his little home run hop when he'd hit a home run, and just, I don't know. He was fun to watch. I mean,
pretty legendary.
Not great in the field. I mean, when the Cubs were in the field, you could turn it off. You didn't need to see him out there, but no, I mean, when
especially
he came to bat,
you got Moises Alou out there too, like that combo.
Yeah, whole Corey Patterson action and center
Corey
field
Patterson, though, he was. I liked him. He was a little Speedy Gonzalez out there.
Yep, but yeah, some of my best memories, and that was when the Cubs started to get halfway decent again with that wild card win in '98, and then of course the '03 season. So you had a few good years in there with Sosa, and then just kind of downhill from there for a little bit. Lou Piniella got him back in '07, '08, but that was about it. It wasn't a whole lot with the Cubs at that point in time. So Sammy was somebody that you went to the ballpark to see even when they weren't that good. So, I
mean, I'll say, like, regarding the steroid era, I loved Barry Bonds. I was a huge fan of Bonds
too.
He was just so damn fun to watch. Like, that's what we're all doing this for. We're all here for entertainment. I'm not saying that I want steroids to be legal or anything. Like, I'm not saying that, because there should be some sort of integrity, but we're ultimately here for the fun and the entertainment. And Bonds, Sosa, those are two of the most entertaining players, at least within that, 3-year span. So I second that.
Yep. Speaking of entertainment, we can be found at Dead Arm Sports, Twitter, Instagram. Check us out on Facebook at Dead Arm Sports. Be the first thing that pops up there. Make sure you go to YouTube, subscribe, click that bell below the video. That way you're subscribed. You know when our live episodes go live, or else they get posted the next day. You'll be the first to know about that. We monitor that chat box. You can ask us any questions there that you want. If you miss out on asking us any questions there, you can always hit us up on our socials. You can ask us questions at Dead Arm Sports. If you have any individual questions for either myself or Gel can be found at DasGel. That's at DASJEL. I can be found at DasJPEC. That's at DASJPEC. Send us in any questions there. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your favorite listening platform. If you send us a screenshot of your written review, we will get you some Dead Arm Sports swag sent out for free. Wild card weekend in the books, 6 games, and I'll be honest, I was not expecting most of them to be very good, and the ones that I was not expecting to be very good ended up being pretty good. And we're going to go through each individual game here, kind of give some brief highlights on it, and then just kind of some questions, I guess, to take away from the games. But overall, pretty solid Saturday through Monday.
Yeah, I mean, my first point of feedback that I have to give the NFL here is stop overemphasizing the phrase Super Wildcard Weekend. What is that even? Like, It's the least super of the weekends. You're just getting further and further away from the Super Bowl. Is it Super Wildcard Weekend? If they're going to keep this like playoff format of having an extra seventh team every season, is every year now going to be Super Wildcard Weekend? I'm over the phrase. I just that's Goodell, take care of it. Squash that idea.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, does this need to be Super Divisional Weekend?
It might as well be.
It's no regular
super
wild
duper
card weekend.
Divisional weekend.
Super duper divisional weekend. I like it. I like it. Let's get into those super wild card games.
God damn
kick it off with the 49ers, 49ers Seahawks. This one in the Bay Area.
You're fired.
San Fran wins 41-23. But that doesn't tell the whole story of this game. Seattle was competitive. They were leading going into halftime. They looked halfway decent. And it was a tale of two Purdy's, and he was Purdy bad in the first half and Purdy darn good in the second half. I mean, came out, accounted for 3 second half touchdowns, led San Francisco back, and essentially San Francisco came out and then just dominated that second half. Seattle didn't hardly put up anything. I think a field goal, but I mean, was this just kind of San Fran getting some of those nerves out of the way? What did you take away from this? Because Purdy was not hitting receivers in that first half. He was overthrowing guys that were wide open. He was making the wrong reads. I mean, Mr. Irrelevant. So, I mean, you understand. I mean, a huge playoff game there in front of the home crowd. San Francisco is one of the favorites in the NFC to make the Super Bowl. So I don't blame him. And it kind of seemed like he got himself collected at halftime and then came out and looked like a totally different quarterback, and the quarterback that we've seen during his undefeated stretch the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of explains his first half was nerves. That's kind of a lot of times that's what you see with nervous quarterbacks is those overthrows. Like you said, if he's just missing open receivers like that, I mean, he's been hitting the bullseye on a lot of throws up until basically this first half. I'd say I'd probably chalk that piece up to nerves. I'd also, though, I got to give Seattle some credit here. I mean, if anybody knows how to rally the troops, it's Pete Carroll. We've been kind of saying that all season that, who would you rather have outside of maybe Dan Campbell? Who would you rather have as a head coach when it's like, everybody's doubting you? It's Dan Campbell, Pete Carroll, Mike Tomlin. Like, those are kind of the three guys that come to mind right off the top of my head. And, Seattle was doubted. This game opened up as a 9.5 point spread. Unfortunately, both of us ended up picking Seattle against the, within that spread and got a couple L's there, but I gave Seattle a lot of credit for coming out and playing feisty, but like you said, I think it probably was nerves on Purdy's part right off the bat. I'm glad that he settled down though for that second half. He ended up throwing for over 300 yards, and that team looks like probably the most complete team, I think, in the NFC. Now, we haven't seen a healthy Philadelphia team since, what was that, week 16, I believe?
Yeah.
Well, week 17 is when Hurts got hurt against the Bears. Or no, that was week 16.
That was 16, yeah.
Yeah.
Since 15 is the last time
really week 15 is when we saw a fully complete Eagles team. So it's kind of, we're talking, that's a ways back now at this point, but
that was last year. Dad joke.
Yikes. Hey, prepping. But no, I mean, at this point, I mean, the way that Purdy was able to rebound from that iffy, I guess, very questionable first half, where Seattle, like you said, went into half with a 1 point lead, which really they shouldn't have had the lead at half. Jimmy Ward made this just dumbass, some offensive or some defensive, 15 yard plus yard penalty think it was a late hit or something.
Yeah,
like,
out of bounds. That it really
that's what
wasn't.
it was. Late hit out of bounds.
That was
like for no reason, which ended up setting up the field goal for Seattle to take the lead at half. But I don't know. I mean, is this enough now that he's hopefully got the jitters out of the way? Is this enough for you to buy into Purdy? Or do you think this is more of like, like we saw in New York in the NBA back we might be talking over a decade ago with Jeremy Lin and Linsanity, where after 2 or 3 weeks, but a lot more games, obviously, Jeremy Lin came down to earth? Or do you buy into Brock Purdy as a long-term option and Trey Lance needs to, get through that rehab as soon as possible, or else he's losing that starting job going into next season?
Yeah. Well, let me hit the short term to start off with. And I'm very curious to see what happens this week. Dallas's defense looked like it was back against Tampa Bay. Granted, Tom Brady's the shell of his former self. He looked terrible. We'll get into that game at the end of this, but Dallas's defense looked halfway decent. They were getting pressure on that Tampa Bay, on the quarterback and everything, getting through their front line. So I'm very curious to see Purdy this week against probably the best defense he's faced to this point in the season in those Dallas Cowboys, if not one of the best. So I'm curious to see what that looks like this week. But long-term wise, if you're San Francisco, you're going to have a tough offseason. I mean, Brock Purdy gets you to the Super Bowl. How do you go back to Trey Lance? I mean, they're going to be in a very interesting situation there. And I don't know necessarily what you do if you're San Francisco, because your starting quarterback has never stayed healthy as long as Kyle Shanahan has been there. So you need to have a decent backup. But is that Brock Purdy? Do you just let him sit? I mean, otherwise, Trey Lance, I don't know that his trade value is really there. Yeah, you probably would have teams kicking the tires on it, but you're not going to get back what you put into going to draft him. So
no,
I don't know what you necessarily do there. I mean, Jimmy G's got to be gone at this point because Brock Purdy is a good, if not better version than Jimmy G. So that's done. That's done. But probably, I mean, if you're San Francisco, I think you got to keep both these quarterbacks. I don't think you can trade one of them because of the fact one of them is going to get hurt, but it'd be interesting to see who comes out of it as the starter going into the season.
It's just so funny that you just made a statement that one of them is going to get hurt. Like, it's just a done deal.
It is, unfortunately. I mean, that's how it is look at the running backs the last few years in San Francisco. George Kittle. I mean, I don't know what is going on in San Francisco.
Something's in that water.
But no one can stay healthy there. Yeah,
something's in the water.
You just get away from the water and drink more milk or something to get those bones strong. But I don't know.
I think that what you do, yes, Jimmy G's good is gone. This is the same conversation, if you remember, that we were having when Jimmy G took over for Lance, where we're like, if Jimmy G wins the Super Bowl, what do you do in this? Do they have a choice but to bring them both back? And then, of course, Jimmy G follows his, career trajectory and is out. And now we're saying with Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, holy shit, what if he brings them to the Super Bowl? I think the easy solution and San Francisco would just be maniacal not to follow this path of bring them both back, let them both fully compete in the offseason, literally like 50-50 split snaps, both, 50-50 with the first team, 50-50 with the second team. And the only problem, though, is like, I feel like Trey Lance looks so good in practice because he's more athletic, because he is a nice athlete. He's got that power arm. But where he struggles and where Brock Purdy is exceptional is in-game situations and making quick decisions. And that just comes straight up. That comes from experience. I mean, Brock Purdy was a 4-year starter in high school, National Player of the Year his senior year in high school, 4-year starter at Iowa State. He just left Iowa State, and we saw what the Cyclones looked like. Like, That's a big piece here where you don't just judge a player or a coach on how successful they were when things were going good, but you can also make an additional and maybe a more important judgment or more consequential judgment based on what is it like when they're gone. Brock Purdy, Breece Hall, of course, Breece Hall is a big piece of this, but those two guys leave and Iowa State has just crumbled and now Brock Purdy looks really good on the Niners. So I think he's pretty good, man. I think he's, I really do. And I think he's got to have the leg up going into next season. I guess speaking of next season and sticking with this same game, there's already been talks about Geno Smith and getting a contract going into next year. Right now, he is technically a free agent. He can be franchise tagged, or they could extend him and give him, a more than 1 year deal, or even give him a 1 year deal at a lower price. What do you think the right course of action is for the Seahawks here with Geno?
I think you see if you could get him to maybe like a 2 or 3 year deal. He was serviceable this year. He was good. He's their all-time leading passer after this season.
Insane,
which is nuts considering all the years
in a single season.
Wilson.
Let's be clear on that.
Single season, but I don't know. I'm fine with him sticking around. I mean, they're a playoff team this year, and you get some defensive pieces and kind of rejuvenate that group. I mean, obviously you had the Legion of Boom, but that's long gone, and you've kind of interjecting some guys now in there to get some line going, and you've got two solid receivers, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. Kenneth Walker looks like an absolute beast in the backfield. So.
I swear to God, man, like I'm like super all in on Kenneth Walker. Like I think he's a top 3 back. He very well
really
could be
next year, especially, I mean, as long as Pete Carroll's there, that running back position is going to be relevant in Seattle. So absolutely. But Seattle, yes, they have Denver's pick, but it's not going to be to get one of those top 2 guys off of the board in Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. So you're going to be looking at a project that needs to sit a little bit. So maybe that's what they do. Maybe they sign Geno for 2 years. Maybe you draft a Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, somebody there. But I think if you're making the effort to sign Geno, then you just kind of forego that and get somebody else that's going to immediately help your team and not be somebody that's just sitting as a backup. Maybe you draft somebody second, maybe 3rd round, something like that, have them sit, see if they develop at all. But I don't know. They were fine with Geno this year. The problem with it is I don't know that he's going to get you to a Super Bowl. I think he's going to be fine to compete for the division, maybe sneak into the playoffs like they did this year, but I don't see him as a Super Bowl winning quarterback at all, or a quarterback that is going to win you games to get you to that Super Bowl. He needs to have a good run game, good supporting cast there, and a solid defense behind him to keep teams from the game being a shootout. So I don't know. That's the only thing I think with Geno Smith that scares me a little bit, but I don't know. If you don't want to trade up and ruin a lot of your draft capital, then I think Geno Smith is who you have, unless you're thinking that you could go after Derek Carr, Jimmy G, but are they really that much better than the season Geno just gave you this year?
I see Jimmy G. I think that would be a mistake. Geno proved to be, if not better than Jimmy G, Geno proved to be at least on his level this past season, where I feel like they're basically the same quarterback. So if you're Seattle at 5, I mean, they've got really one of 2 scenarios here, which is, I think first off, they should sign Geno to like a 2-year, $50 million with only 30 of it guaranteed or something.
Guess in that case, let me just kind of cut you off then. Are they better off just kind of franchising him the next 2 years? I don't know what that quarterback hit is.
No, that quarterback. Well, so you take the average of the top 5 guys in the franchise tag. You're talking about
so probably in the 30
closer to 40
then,
million probably a year at that point. So maybe you can go 2 years, 60 mil, guarantee 35 or 40 of it. And then draft somebody at 5, or you could still have that same contract with Geno and either take a quarterback there if you want to go Will Levis, or maybe you get lucky and somebody jumps up to 2 or 3 and takes Levis, and somebody else jumps and falls in love with an offensive lineman, and Jalen Carter falls to you at 5. If that's the case, then you go Jalen Carter and you just keep beefing up that defense, because that run defense got kind of torched by CMC this past weekend. So I think Seattle has a lot of options here, but I think move number 1 is try to get Geno on a 2-year deal and without having to give up max money, ideally less than franchise tag money.
Yep. No, I like that too. And maybe, like you said, if somebody jumps up and the cards fall your way and one of those quarterbacks falls to you too, a franchise tag would be fine, but you have to tag him before the draft, obviously.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
You're taking a gamble there, but maybe that is a route that they go to, and they just say, hey, we're going to give him a bunch of money this year.
See how things play out in the draft. Yep. And if you can get a stud Jalen Carter, go for it. They don't have any offensive needs, really. It's not like they clearly don't need a running back. Their offensive line looks nice. They could grab another interior offensive lineman later in the draft. They've got pieces, Lockett, DK still looked really nice. Noah Fant, very serviceable tight end. I don't think they need to do much on offense outside of maybe bringing that project quarterback. And then, so either do that or beef up that defense, continuing to beef up that defense and play that Pete Carroll model, the Marshawn Lynch team with Pete Carroll.
Yeah. All right, Joe, let's get into a game I know you and I are just dying to talk about. And it's one that we kind of called going into it last week. And Brandon Staley blows another one. Jaguars end up coming back in an epic fashion, game-winning field goal as time expires to beat the Chargers 31-30. Chargers were up 27-0 late in the second quarter, 27-7 at halftime, and end up blowing that lead. And I think one of the most mind-boggling things for me, Jill, is I went back and looked at the play-by-play, and they ran the ball only 7 times the entire second half with one of the best running backs in the league in Austin Eckler, up 27-7. You'd think you'd run just to kill some clock, because you know what? The clock at this point is what you want to run down. And one of your only enemies at this point in time is just getting that time off the clock, run it out, and you win the game. But no, let's pass. Let's kill the clock. Let's just do something stupid.
How do you not learn from the Falcons who blew that 28-3 lead? My favorite part of this game was when the Jags were down 27-0 and I hit up our group chat and I just said, just waiting for Staley to blow this. The chat was silent for about an hour and a half, and then it happened. They blew it. It was such an amazing moment. Austin Eckler, I mean, to be fair, Austin Eckler on the ground this year hadn't done much, but he had been doing a ton of stuff through the air. I mean, he still ended up being one of the best fantasy backs, especially if you're talking PPR, because of his air work. And he didn't get involved through the air either that much in the second half. It was a lot of, I mean, when you're up 27-7 at half, the second half, the clock is your best friend. All you have to do is probably score once, run clock, and try not to throw picks. And what did they do? They threw the ball a ton. They were snapping the ball with like 15 seconds left on the play clock constantly instead of running it down. Like, seriously, think about that. If you get one first down, and instead of snapping the ball at 16 seconds, you snap it at 1 second, and you run and you're able to get a first down, like that's an extra minute and a half to 2 minutes off the clock, even if you just get one first down. And if you that's the kind of stuff that you have to do instead of snapping the ball with 15 seconds left. And I don't know if they're thinking, hey, let's run it up and try to win this game 41-7. I don't understand what the offensive strategy was. But on top of that, Brandon Staley's a defensive coach. He should be able to have his defense hold a 27-point lead. Trevor Lawrence starts off the game with 4 picks, and I don't even know if that was necessarily because of a defensive scheme. I mean, Lawrence was just really bad to start up the first half. He had a lot of missed throws. He was throwing balls straight to Asante Samuel. Just, hey, you're my receiver, right? That's what it looked like. They were going right in between his numbers. He did have one pick where he, defensive lineman right up, doink off the top of his helmet. But 4 picks in the first half, and you can't, with a 27-0 lead, and you can't overcome that. I don't know. I mean, Brandon Staley, defensive-minded head coach, how do you let your defense blow this? And then also to not have the wherewithal and the mindset to tell Joe Lombardi or tell Justin Herbert, wind this clock down. Even though Joe Lombardi is the offensive play caller, you have to still tell him or tell Herbert, run this down every single play to under 3 seconds left in the clock, because that's all we have to do is just try to survive. We don't have to be excellent. We just have to not throw picks and pick sixes, and shit, all it takes is a few 5-minute drives, a punt deep into their territory. Even if we win this game 27 to even if we don't score in the second half, we should still be good. And it was just an incredibly poor defense or offensive strategy in the second half. We saw this morning, recording live on a Tuesday, Joe Lombardi, the offensive coordinator, and the QB coach for the Chargers, both ended up getting let go. It was confirmed Brandon Staley is keeping his job. This falls right in line with what the Chargers do. I mean, they kept Mike McCoy for 4 years. They kept Anthony Lynn for 4 years. They were both those coaching regimes. Those 8 years were full of disappointment. Now 2 years under Staley, you're looking at 10 years over 3 coaches of just complete disappointment. You have one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league with Justin Herbert. I mean, he wasn't excellent, especially in the second half. He was missing some stuff, but he's still one of the top 5, top 6 quarterbacks in the league. And who wouldn't want to trade for him outside of Burrow, Mahomes,
Brock
etc. What's that? Brock Purdy. So, I mean, it wasn't a perfect performance by Herbert, but you don't need a perfection from Herbert when you're up 27-0.
No. And we were all wondering after that game too in our text chain, is this it for Brandon Staley? We had talked about it last week. We were hoping that for the Chargers' sake that they would lose to get rid of him. But status quo, like you said, with the Chargers. He's coming back next year. Probably told that he needed to get rid of some of his staff. He wanted to keep his job. So there goes Joe Lombardi. And like I said, QB coach, passing game coordinator out the door as well. But I mean, we're going to see the same thing. It's just frustrating because there goes Justin Herbert's entire rookie contract, that the time that you build your roster for the future before you actually have to start paying him big bucks.
You have to pay him now.
Absolutely waste.
You have to pay him now.
Yeah.
It's going to probably be a 5-year, $220 million deal at least. So now you're out of all that salary cap space, because it's just amazing. I guess I can't. The Chargers had Phillip Rivers for like 15 years and they just blew it. They blew that whole thing. They never achieved what they were supposed to achieve. Because they're the most frustrating team. They've always had mad talent on both sides of the ball. They've generally had pretty solid special teams. Like if you're Dean Spanos, don't you think to yourself, I think the missing link is a high-end head coach. Don't you have to think that?
Yeah.
But instead,
too bad there aren't any out there this year.
what with the initials SP?
Gosh.
Just brutal. I guess let's get over to the winning team here really quick. I thought, and I guess sticking with the coach quarterback connection, watching that game, the connection that Trevor Lawrence and Doug Pederson have, it was one of the more impressive things that I saw. I mean, they would just show Doug on the sidelines, just like, just being like, I don't know. They just have like some strange, amazing connection where it's like, Doug just has to like, say like, hey, think, and like, just, it's easier on YouTube to see what I'm trying to do here, but sorry for the podcasting audience. But it's like, they just have some connection here, and it developed. Of course, it wasn't there week one, but you get to the end of the season and seemed like it was just so spot on. And that's what you want in a coach quarterback relationship. And it just makes me think, I think, with this help and development from Doug Pederson, Trevor Lawrence is the truth, man. I mean, I think he's the guy. I think he's there to stay. There were question marks after year one with him and Urban about like, oh God, did we overhype this guy? You get him a legit offensive head coach that's not a disaster, and now we're seeing the best that we're seeing the best of Trevor Lawrence that we've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, Doug Pederson got to learn behind one of the best quarterbacks ever, and coached a Super Bowl winning team in Philly. So, I mean, you'd love the experience that he has between head coaching and backup quarterback in the league, and all that insight is just getting peppered into Trevor Lawrence's brain and picking each other's brains and everything too. So yeah, I mean, you couldn't have found a better offseason hire to get the most out of Trevor Lawrence. And it means just exponential the amount of improvement he's had from his rookie year to this year. And that team's young. You're going to have Calvin Ridley coming into the mix next year with the wide receivers. Travis Etienne looks like a boss too, getting that connection going from their Clemson days. Defense is young and upcoming, so sky's the limit for Jacksonville, which is fun because they've been the laughing stock of the league for how many years in a row now. So it's nice to see them getting into the playoffs, and I don't think this is the last time we'll see them in the playoffs either.
Does Trevor Lawrence now jump into that group of quarterbacks, that very short list of quarterbacks that at this point are completely untradeable? I mean, you're talking about Lawrence. I put him in that list with I'm not ranking these guys. So I'm just saying completely untradeable guys, given everything, given salary, given youth, given ability. Mahomes, Lawrence, Herbert, Burrow. Who else do you throw into
Probably
that mix?
Hurts.
I mean, Jalen Hurts, you think? Yeah, I guess. Yeah. After this season, you put him in there. I mean, that's a very short list of guys that you can.
Did you say Josh Allen?
Doesn't even matter what you offer me. You could offer me your entire draft for the next 2 years. I'm sure as hell. I don't think I'm moving off of Trevor Lawrence, because if I'm the Jags, hell, I've had a shit ton of draft capital over the last decade. Guess what it's gotten me? Nowhere. So outside of a Blake Bortles AFC Championship game somehow. So I think Trevor Lawrence does enter that stratosphere of untradeable quarterbacks, which again, it's a short list.
Yeah. Speaking of untradeable quarterbacks, Skylar Thompson. Nope. Josh Allen. Let's go to him.
We forgot about Josh Allen. Yeah, I guess I put him in that list probably too.
Bills end up holding on, surviving at home 34-31. And Skylar Thompson, yeah, Dolphins are rolling a little bit. Got the help of a defensive touchdown in this one, which they needed to get back into the game and to be able to compete in this one. But put up a show. They obviously took 1 out of 2 from the Bills during the regular season and gave them a nice scare in this one. Buffalo hangs on, goes up 34-24. Miami gets a late well, I guess fourth quarter touchdown, about 10 minutes left. And then Bills just kind of held them from here. But this was not the performance you thought you would see from the Bills at home. Weather wasn't a factor in Buffalo that sometimes can be at come playoffs. And Miami with their third string quarterback almost pulls off an incredible road upset.
I just see I see a choke job on both sides from both the Dolphins and the Bills. On the Dolphins, from Mike McDaniel, I feel like he was really questioning himself that whole game. There were a number of times in that game when Skylar Thompson, a 7th round pick, was getting these play calls in really late. I think they were only called for 2 delay of games, but they could have been called for 9. There were 9 times when that play clock hit 0. That's on Mike McDaniel. You have to know that you're working with a 7th round quarterback. You're not working with Tua, who knows, can just knows everything off the top of his head. You're working with a 7th round, 3rd string quarterback, rookie. I think that Mike McDaniel choked there offensively. Like, they had opportunities, man, to win that game. And there were some clutch 3rd downs and one particular 4th down when they were going to go for it on 4th and 2. And Mike McDaniel thought that, or 4th and 1, and Mike McDaniel thought that the Dolphins got the 1st down. So he was in there relaying a 1st and 10 call when they didn't make the 1st down. And then it took him a while to, run the scenario through his head and make a play call. And they ended up getting a delay of game, and then they punted. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I mean, I get it. He's a first-time head coach. He's a young dude, but this is the kind of stuff where, it costs you games. And then on the Bills side, Josh Allen did not look refined. I don't know why they just haven't been able to establish anything that even looks close to a run game. I don't know if that falls on McDermott, if that falls on Ken Dorsey, the offensive play caller, but they've never been able to establish a run game McDermott's entire time in Buffalo. Buffalo should have ran away with this game, and it was way too close the entire time.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising, too, that they didn't get a run game going, because Devin Singletary's been a playoff darling for them the last couple of years and kind of rejuvenated fantasy hopes for him in that Buffalo system and kind of given everybody false hopes with his usage in the playoffs. But they just can't really get anything going. And I don't know. It was just kind of surprising that they didn't get a bigger win than just the 3-point. I mean, you'll take what you can get. Maybe they're looking ahead and possibly a Cincinnati rematch. We'll get into that game here in a little bit, but I don't know. Josh Allen, like you said, looked rusty, like he hadn't played in a while, which obviously we know that wasn't the case. He played just about the whole game the week before in week 18, but it didn't look like that Bills team. And they're really, really going to need to turn that around come Sunday this weekend when they have to take on Cincinnati. So we'll see what that ends up looking like, but I don't know. And with the Dolphins, it'll be an interesting offseason for them with what do you do with Tua, and curious to see what goes on there. But any other takeaways from this one, Joe?
No, I mean, I just wonder, do you have to be worried about the Bills going forward? But we can talk about that, I guess, in the next episode and when we're previewing the next game.
Sounds good. All right, halfway done. Giants, Vikings, next one up. Joe and I correctly picked this one. Giants pulling off the road upset.
I will say you had the balls to take the Giants straight up. I said Vikings with a 1-point win. You took them straight up, so props, buddy.
Yep. End up winning by a touchdown, 31-24. Daniel Jones, another solid game from him in this one. And I think the bigger story to me is just Justin Jefferson's usage for Minnesota down the stretch. I mean, he got absolutely stifled in that Green Bay game, but I mean, shit, I was going through the play-by-play again because I was like, they hardly threw the ball to him at all. 3 targets in the second half of that game. That is it. It was the TJ Hawkinson show, and Kirk Cousins just absolutely crapped the bed on 4th down, throwing it 5 yards short of the first down on 4th down to TJ Hawkinson. But I don't know. I don't think the Giants were doing a great job of covering Justin Jefferson, but for whatever reason, Kirk Cousins just seemed like he was panicking and throwing to TJ Hawkinson for the check down.
Well, first off, I got to put some blame on Kevin O'Connell here for that 4th down play call, because you know that Kirk is one to just freeze up and, oh my God, I see a little bit of pressure. I need to dump it off to the shortest, or to the closest guy possible. So you need to be running routes when you've got a guy like Kirk Cousins that are going to be past the 1st down marker. So Kirk was being Kirk. I am like, that's him dumping that ball off. That's probably the least surprising thing of the weekend to me. But Kevin O'Connell, learn from this. And if you end up hanging on to Cousins going into next season, which I'd imagine they do, learn from this and adjust your play calling accordingly. But I'm really glad you brought up Justin Jefferson, because I wanted to bring this particular topic up. We've seen Stephon Diggs basically force his way out of Minnesota because he was frustrated with the limitations of his quarterback. At least that's the common assumption in around the league. Is this going to happen again? Is Justin Jefferson going to do the same thing? Because he deserves better. I mean, I get that he's putting up numbers, but JJ's played at the highest level. He played on the best offensive team in college football history, and they won a title. He knows what epic is like, and he knows Kirk Cousins ain't epic. So JJ he's not going to be forcing his way out this season, but I mean, if you're looking at 2 seasons after next season and a half out, mid-season 2 years from now, are we seeing JJ being a disgruntled stud wide receiver possibly?
Possibly, but I think if you're looking that far out, I don't even know if Kirk Cousins is going to be in their plan that long. They might end up having to do something before then. And then in that case, then you kind of see what ends up coming in, if it's a rookie quarterback or what kind of situation you have there. But I mean, if you're Justin Jefferson, you're happy regular season because, like you said, you're putting up numbers. I mean, outside of, I think going into week 17 this year, he needed like 210 yards to set the all-time receiving record for a single season, and didn't have that happen against the Packers. And
yeah, because Jair just shut him down. Beast.
But I mean, outside of that, though, I mean, he's got to be happy with the numbers he's putting up on the season. He's getting the ball in important situations in the game as far as scoring touchdowns. But I don't know. I mean, what you have with Kirk Cousins. He's going to win you games during the regular season that start at noon. And outside of that, it's a struggle. I mean, he chokes under pressure, and he just isn't a good quarterback in big games. And you're going to keep seeing this. I don't know if it's going to force Justin Jefferson out, but I mean, if it comes to the time that he wants to win games, it's not in meaningful games in January. It's not going to be with Kirk Cousins.
Just food for thought. Keep that in the, keep that in the back of your mind, because we saw it happen with Diggs.
Yeah. Why
can't JJ do the same thing? They're on the same level, man.
Yep. Anything else from this one, Joe?
I mean, just I guess last thing on the Giants side of the ball, really quick. You only get one franchise tag, and they got both Daniel Jones and Saquon coming up. Who do you use that on? Who do you extend? Or do you give an extension? Or do you give DJ a 1-year deal, give Saquon the franchise, or vice versa? Or give Saquon maybe a longer term, like a Zeke contract. But of course, Zeke is the reason that giving a running back a long-term contract is a sketchy proposition. But I don't think Saquon's going to go to Cabo and get all, chubby like Zeke did. So What do you do? But the concern obviously with Saquon is the injury history.
Yeah.
So
and
what do you do here?
I think I tag Saquon because you don't see running backs historically, once they get that second contract, put up the numbers that they did when they first entered the league when they were on that rookie deal. So
Aaron Jones, though, I mean, he's still balling out.
Yeah. I don't know. Just, I guess injury history wise, I would feel more comfortable if I'm them putting the tag on Saquon, because we talked about earlier with Geno tagging a quarterback. That's a huge hit on your salary cap. You're not getting that out of the running back position. That's pretty reasonable.
For sure.
So I think that, tag Saquon. And then, man, Daniel Jones has been looking good the last couple of weeks. I don't know if it's Brian Daboll calling plays he's comfortable with and showing his strengths, but I don't know. Do you give him just like a 2-year deal or something and just kind of see what you have from there and then reevaluate?
Do you go the same deal that we were talking about with Geno? Give him a 2-year 50 to 60 million, guarantee 30, 35 of it, and then reevaluate?
I think so, because
that's probably the same thing that I would do is give him the Geno contract.
Yeah. That's probably your best bet. And then just kind of see you're not tied long-term to any of these guys. So you're not stuck in salary cap hell for a while. You can get out of these contracts after a year or two if they're just not panning out, and just kind of restart from there.
And that allows you both those two guys, that if you're rocking a 2-year deal, that gives you 1 year to evaluate, 1 additional year to evaluate. And then if you wanted to draft somebody in the next draft, they can sit for a year under Geno, under Daniel Jones. So I think that's probably gotta be the best way to go right now. Yeah. I'm certainly not signing Daniel Jones to a 4-year. I'm not committing to Daniel Jones for 4 years. Hell no.
No. But I mean, you have to look at it too, that if you're not getting one of the top quarterbacks in the draft, is there really a better option out there to take over Daniel Jones?
Of course not.
I don't think so.
And you're not, I mean, what's the point of going out and getting Jimmy G, Derek Carr? We know that Brian Daboll loves his mobile quarterbacks, with both, example A, Josh Allen, example B, Daniel Jones. Derek Carr, Jimmy G, good God, they're just, I mean, thankfully not as immobile as Brady, and we'll get to that game in a second here, but good God. Yeah. I mean, that's what Daniel Jones does bring, though, which I think is extremely valuable for the Giants. Do you want to move on to Baltimore-Cincy?
I do. Bengals end up pulling a victory in this one. Again, another one that I thought was going to be very one-sided, a blowout, but got to remember it's an AFC North battle, and those usually come down to the wire and are usually fairly close games regardless. But fumble recovery by Sam Hubbard ended up being the difference in this one. Tyler Huntley extends for the goal line and gets the ball knocked out, and 98-yard fumble return touchdown that was a game changer in that one. But Cincinnati just, I don't know, something looked off with them for whatever reason. And it's interesting because we talked to 2 teams in the last 3 games that we've talked about, the Bills and Bengals. They're going to be matching up. We'll have that preview coming up, but 2 teams that didn't look that great this weekend, and somehow they did end up finding the win column. That's what matters in the playoffs, is scrapping together wins. But I don't know, it just wasn't what I thought it was going to be with that Baltimore defense that's a little banged up, and then obviously the offense without Lamar Jackson.
I thought that what was a little bit more, this is one of the more fiery quotes that we've ever gotten out of that Ravens franchise ever. J.K. Dobbins after the game said basically like he's tired of not getting the ball. He's tired of being held back. He said that he should have been the one getting the ball that close to the goal line, and that we shouldn't be putting Tyler Huntley in that position. Then he went on to say that if we would have had Lamar, we would have won. So you got a disgruntled running back. I mean, Dobbins, when healthy, is really strong. They should not be. And this is another thing. Jim Harbaugh said that Tyler Huntley was told on that QB sneak to just run a traditional QB sneak, go underneath and get the push from the backfield, not go up and try to dunk it like Trevor Lawrence did. They were at like the 1.5 or 2 yard line. He's only 6'1", maybe. I think he's listed at 6'1". I don't know, man. He might be like 5'11 and a half, not super long arms. Trevor Lawrence is 6'6". He can get away with doing that stuff. Tyler Huntley's not that kind of a player. He's not that kind of a body. He's not that kind of a, he's a great athlete, but he's not the same, just doesn't have that same Gumby length that Trevor Lawrence does. So that's literally, you're talking about a 14-point swing there with what could have been a touchdown. It turns into a scoop and score for the Bengals. Scoop and score. Shout out to Culver's scoop of the day. Hashtag not a sponsor. So that would be the scoop of the day. But no, I guess, to back up what you kind of said about Cincinnati, we're on to Cincinnati. This shouldn't have even been a game. Tyler Huntley threw 0 passes through the first quarter and a half, and the Ravens were still in that game. That shouldn't be the case. So I don't know. Burrows, for some reason, always struggled with Baltimore, but this has me a little bit worried. I mean, Cincinnati's been my favorite from out of the AFC all season. This game makes me kind of question that thought because, and it's not like the Ravens outplayed the Bengals. The Bengals just did stupid shit, and they should have lost that game. When we really go back and think about the sequence of scoring and everything. I mean, if it weren't for that fumble, they would have lost that game. Maybe Joe Burrow pulls a rabbit out of his hat, some sort of magic trick, and the Bengals do end up winning, but they very, very easily could have lost this game to a Ravens team that doesn't. I mean, Tyler Huntley, he is what he is, man. He's a good fighter. It's not a great quarterback. So I'm a little bit more worried about the Bengals. It'll be interesting to see how two teams that I think severely disappointed, like you said, in the Bengals and the Bills play next week.
Yep. All right, moving into our last one, Monday night, and got a bunch of great games over the weekend, and this one was the dud of the weekend. Cowboys go into Tampa and just absolutely roll over Tampa Bay. 31-14. Cowboys didn't choke. That's the first thing I wrote down my notes for this one. I mean, you're so used to every year they find a way to shoot themselves in the foot. Brett Mayer tried. Wow. I mean, he tried his darndest and didn't matter in this one, but just an absolute dominant performance from Dak. No turnovers, accounted for 5 total touchdowns, 4 through the air, 1 on the ground. Cowboys defense looked solid too. Red zone interception to Tom Brady. But I think ultimately this was just a byproduct of the only reason Tampa Bay got into the playoffs is because the division was that bad this year. They were not a playoff team. They were garbage. They didn't resemble a playoff team at any point in time this season. They couldn't get the run game going yesterday. And when you have to rely on Tom Brady throwing the ball that many times, it's not going to happen. And just inconsistency in that offense all season was ultimately their demise against the Dallas Cowboys solid defense. And I'm very looking forward to tomorrow's podcast to dissect that Cowboys 49ers matchup. I mean, I think that's going to be a good one, but ultimately, yeah. What did you see from this one, Joe?
I think that Brady throwing the ball 66 times tells us the story of their season. They had never established a running game all year. Byron Leftwich was at one point offered that Jaguars head coaching job. Thank God for Trevor Lawrence. He didn't get it because he's now out of his job as the offensive coordinator or if he's not yet officially, he's got to be gone. How Brady's success has never revolved around him throwing the ball a ton, especially downfield. And It's always revolved around having a really balanced attack. He's got guys like Burkhead and James White, freaking however many passing down. Kevin White, or not Kevin White.
James White.
Who was it?
James White?
No. It was like maybe there's like a Kevin Smith, some like number 44 from back in the day, running receiving back. Like that's what, and then just possession receivers. This, and then also a solid running game. I mean, the stud Patriots teams, that's when they had like Corey Dillon, who at the time was an awesome running back. They always had really nice running games with split backfields. LeGarrette Blount. So him throwing the ball 66 times. I mean, you had Leonard Fournette, you got Rachaad White, who looked like he was starting to come on as a running back. They never really shifted their offense to start giving Rachaad White any additional touches. I mean, this falls on play calling. And Byron Leftwich deserves to lose his job after thinking that Brady needs to throw the ball 66 times. That's asinine. The dude's 45 years old, and you could see his arm dying. It was like he was missing. He wasn't just barely missing throws. He was missing them by like 5+ yards.
Did he have a dead arm, Joe? At the end of the game?
Sponsored by #TB12. I guess I wonder, like, I mean, Brady's obviously not coming back. It seems like he kind of gave his farewell to the reporters in his post-game presser. He was like, I really appreciate all that you guys have done, not only this year, but in past years. And, it's not like you guys have an easy job either. We all have to be here every single day and blah, blah, blah. He basically gave his farewell to Tampa. I guess now the obvious question is, what's next? Is it retirement? Is it the Raiders? Is it, does he go to Miami? Miami already tampered with him. Why wouldn't they go after him again? Like, they already lost a first-round pick. Get something out of that lost first-round pick. Go get your guy, Brady. So I don't know. I guess that's the next thing on the list is for Tom, or, on the Brady topic is, what's next? Because he's clearly not coming back to Tampa.
Yeah,
Tampa Bay is over.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I don't know. I think it's got to be the Raiders with familiarity with Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels knows how to use him. Obviously, some of the best years of Tom Brady's career were with McDaniels as his OC. Got a solid run game there, although they don't have Josh Jacobs under contracts. We'll see what ends up happening there because they were stupid and declined his 5th-year option. But you have Devontae Adams.
They're going to have to freaking franchise tag that guy now and pay him twice what they would have had to with the 5th-year option.
Good move.
Classic Raiders.
Yes. But you got Devontae Adams. You got Darren Waller there. So I don't know. That makes the most sense. Otherwise, I think where Tom Brady needs to go is, this is not happening, but he needs to go to a place like San Francisco that's got a solid defense, a good run game, get back to the bread and butter of, like what you said, his New England offense was. That's where he needs to end up if he wants another shot at a Super Bowl. It worries me a little bit with the Raiders if they don't get Jacobs back, if Jacobs takes a step back. I mean, he had an unbelievable season this year that kind of came out of nowhere after his last two, just kind of under the radar years. But I don't know. I think we might see a little bit more of the same if he goes to the Raiders, and that's a tough division.
Tell me a spot outside of the Raiders that feels more ideal than the Jets. Get rid of just discount the Robert Kraft relationship. Obviously him and Belichick, I don't know. It sounds like they've kind of rekindled whatever relationship they have. They're not at odds like they were, similar to how Rodgers and McCarthy, now that they're apart from each other. Rodgers has said that he still holds a lot of respect for McCarthy, but discounting all that stuff, Jets, hell of a defense. Breece Hall, 2 stud wide receivers in Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson. Very, serviceable, at least tight end in Usoma. You've got running back depth there with Michael Carter. What's the guy's name? Starts with a Z. Zonovan Knight, and Michael Carter on top of him. So, I feel like that's a really ideal landing spot. If it weren't for Robert Kraft and the relationship that he has with him, I think that would have been a great landing spot.
Yeah, no, that very well could be a good spot for him too. Ultimately, it's going to come down to, does Brady want to play? And then I think at this point in time, he's never been about the money. So, it's not going to be about that. He's going to dissect each team and figure out what gives him the best shot at getting a Super Bowl, because that's all he wants and cares about. At this point in time, that's what he's coming back for it. He doesn't need the money at all. He's had a long enough career there. So it'll be interesting. Hey, what do you know, Joe? We get another Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers retirement offseason discussion to talk about week in, week out. All right, well, really quick, hit the Sony Open here before we head out for the day. Siwoo Kim ends up shooting a 6 under 64 to take a one-shot victory in this one over Hayden Buckley.
Six under Sunday,
final round. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, final round.
Final
okay.
round. Yep.
Yeah.
But started 3 shots behind on the day and had a heck of a back nine to take the victory in the last Hawaii golf tournament of the calendar year. And now moving back over to the Cali trip. But ultimately picks, Tom Kim, not so hot. JJ Spawn, I'll let you talk JJ Spawn quick, Jill.
Yeah, JJ Spawn ended up tied for 12th on the day, or I guess for the tournament at 12 under. And Josh's pick and the leader in the pack in terms of betting odds, Tom Kim, missed the cut, finished 1 over. So it's your boy over here, Gel, going into only 2 tournaments in with a 19-stroke lead going into next weekend.
Yeah, didn't serve me well last year, so we'll see if I can right the ship.
That's right. I don't want to be talking too much smack this early.
No. All right, that'll wrap up this episode. Can be found at Dead Arm Sports, Twitter, Instagram. Check us out on Facebook at Dead Arm Sports. Go to YouTube, type in Dead Arm Sports into that search bar. You'll see our black and yellow logo. Subscribe there. Click the bell. That way you know when our live episodes drop. You can ask Gel any questions at DotsGel. I can be found at DotsJPEG. And of course, we're at Dead Arm Sports. You can ask us questions on any of those handles. Subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your favorite listening platform. Send us a screenshot of your review, and we will get you some swag. What are those platforms, Gel?
Hit us up on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcasts. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review to whatever your chosen listening platform is. Take a screenshot of that written review. Hit us up on our socials at Dead Arm Sports. And also make sure to find us on YouTube. Just search Dead Arm Sports. Hit that bell so that you get notifications whenever we go live, whenever we put out any sort of new content. That's very, very important to all you listeners.
Appreciate everybody out there listening and watching us. If you could tell someone you know about our podcast, that would help us out, and we'd greatly appreciate it. Otherwise, we'll be the episode's about wrapped up. We will be back tomorrow with you to preview the super duper NFL divisional round, along with our playoff Drew locks. We'll have some pick 'em for you for the games, along with the American Express preview as well. And Gel, close her out.
Big time Tommy Kim.
Boo.